From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in Melbourne, a city that's been enjoying the Barty party, Ash Barty, having a wonderful run in the Australian Open, and Dylan Alcott, his final didn't go the way he wanted, but in wheelchair tennis in the quads, where he has just been remarkable and the new Australian of the year as well. But this is a cricket programme, not a tennis programme, and I am enjoying covering the Women's Ashes Test, which is taking place in Canberra. I'm following it all from the studio here in Melbourne, but we'll get more into that as the show goes on.
You're a true all-rounder, Ali, and it's good that you're a dual passport holder, I think, at the moment, the way Australia's travelling against England. As you can see, there's a Christmas tree behind me, and it's still Christmas for Australian cricket. Maybe not in the Big Bash. That's been very curious. The Sixers have somehow got to the final, despite the fact they can't have their best replacements. It was the most miraculous victory against the Strikers to get to that point. So the cricket season glows on, and the Australian batting pretty good to start the test match in Canberra.
Well, for both of you, I guess I have to wish Ash Barty good luck. Hello, this is Charu Sharma for All India Radio. Not in Bangalore this week, but 5 hours away in India's most beautiful district called Coorg, where in the coffee plantation, picking is going on, requiring some extra attention. So yeah, we are in the middle of the jungle. Not that this scenario would appear like in the middle of the jungle. But, you know, also happy to be away from all the lament and all the confusion caused by the Indian cricket team sinking like a rock after that first win in South Africa. And looking forward to all the home series now. Not paying so much attention to the Women's Ashes as I should. Alison, I know you're going to rub me on the knuckles for that.
Well, we're going to be talking about it, Charu. I know there's some issues that you're wanting to get into, so we will come to those as well, because we are going to start with the Women's Ashes series, because it has headed to Canberra, with Australia leading England 4-2 in the multi-format series. That's after Australia won the first T20. Unfortunately, both the second and third T20s were abandoned due to rain, and that weather was a huge frustration for England captain Heather Knight and her team. But they are now focused on this test match, which is worth 4 points. If Australia win it, well, then they'd retain the Ashes before the 3 ODIs are even played. That means England cannot afford to lose. Now, day one did see England get off to a great start with the ball. Heather Knight put Australia into bat, and well, they got reduced to 2 for 4 and then 3 for 43 before Meg Lanning, the captain, and Rachel Haynes settled into a century partnership. Both were dismissed short of hundreds. Australia, though, closed the day on 7 for 327. Pretty healthy looking total. Now, Jim, it is fascinating to watch a women's test because it's 4 days in duration. It's a format that isn't played domestically and very rarely internationally. So, you know, adaptation, stamina and concentration levels are all tested. And England did drop both of those key batters, Lanning when she was on 14 just before lunch, Haynes on 44 in the 20 minutes after. And those drops proved costly. They so often do in Test cricket, don't they?
Yes, particularly with this Australian side, which has a fair bit of depth and clout in its batting. And England got on the wrong end of that as a result of giving a few chances away. So it's tough, I think, in these games, particularly when England are under the points pressure of this format, trailing 4 points to 2 because of washouts in the T20. And the pressure just builds. They've sent Australia in. They've got to do this. They've got to do that. So the test match can never stand alone in a series of games, which would normally be the case if there's some sort of tradition and history of playing test cricket. You could keep the white ball stuff over there and play the test match separately, but that's not the way it works. So I think England have got a very big task ahead of them to stay alive in this match, because they've got to compete with Australia's excellent score and try and open the game up over 4 days to get a result other than a draw, which I would think at the moment is probably their best outcome, in the hope that with the 1 days they can do a little bit better than they did in the 120.
It's interesting what you're saying there about the test match and, you know, can it stand alone? Of course, the test used to stand alone, and that's what the Ashes trophy was decided on. And Australia, England have played each other since, 1934? But it was 2013 when this multi-format series was brought in, because the test matches were sort of dwindling, and rather than playing 3, it then became a series of 2 and then just one completely on its own, which was felt to be unsatisfactory. Charu, what do you make of this multi-format series with the T20s, the Test and the ODIs? Do you like it?
Well, I have a fairly healthy dose of traditionalism inside me as well when it comes to cricket, but I've got to admit, the area that cricket's moving into, the way it's evolving, this is probably the best way forward because, I mean, time's just so short. You can't have these long tours anymore, and there's so many more countries to play. You can't just play against one country and go there and play 5 tests once and then go and play one days again and so on and so forth. So this is the way to go. And I know it takes attention away from the single test match. If there was a possibility of having a longer test series, and I'm sure the multi-format would have seemed a little less useful. But here, every match needs to count because this is the big tour. And it might mean for bigger squads because there might be professionals playing red ball and white ball differently. But it does give a lot of relevance to every single match, every single day, barring, of course, the weather problems that you had in Australia this time around. So I'm not against it. I think if every single match counts, it garners a lot more attention rather than, as you know, Australia every once in a while doesn't seem to be friendly with the T20s. So it's like, we don't care what happens. Here, you got to care for every single match. So this is probably the way forward, given the way global cricket is evolving.
Now, I feel it has, in a way, sort of saved the test format for the women because I think that really was in danger of dying out. Like South Africa had stopped playing it. India had stopped playing it. When they played England in a multi-format last summer, they hadn't played a test since 2014. So it has provided a way of keeping it alive. But there is that difficulty, Jim, isn't there, when players don't play multi-format cricket at all, domestically, in the rest of the world, anywhere. And then, preparation is difficult because of COVID at the moment, certainly. But I was chatting to Lisa Sthalekar earlier today, the former Australia spinner, and she was suggesting if there's no domestic cricket played, multi-day cricket, maybe by way of preparing players or at least working it into a domestic schedule, what about having Australia v Australia A matches scattered throughout a season, and in England have England v England A 4-day matches scattered throughout the season? So it actually gives players a bit more experience of multi-day when it's a time where it's impossible at the moment to consider bringing 4-day cricket in on a permanent sort of domestic club basis.
If Test cricket is going to continue to be relevant, they need to play more preparation style cricket, whatever it may be, in order for it to have some credibility. So that's something they're going to have to wrangle with because unless you get all the other countries to come to the party, it's a standalone competition, it seems, just for England and Australia. And I don't think that's an altogether healthy situation. But look, whichever way you look at it, we know that the short form white ball game, whichever name you put to it, is going to dominate the conversation and the television station's preoccupation with covering the women's game. So if somehow they can maintain what they've got and make it viable, perhaps it can endure. But it's the old story about, where does Test cricket go from here when there's so much pressure in the schedule with all the white ball cricket that we're playing. And that's not just a women's thing, it's a men's thing more and more. But somehow we've got to try and find a way to keep Test cricket as part of the game. How you do it, that's the quandary.
Yeah, indeed. I think I feel rather more optimistic, sort of knowing how special the players, look upon the opportunity to play a Test cricket, however rare it might be. But speaking of credibility, Charu, an important element of this Test match has been that there is full DRS, the decision review system, which in previous important women's series has been missing. And that has seemed to be a bit of a slight, but it's here now. That's significant, isn't it?
Big step forward. Not just because it sort of gives, as you say, a special recognition to women's cricket, but also the utility of it. Because, we can't have one form of the game always not being assisted by technology, because we know how much it assists. Now, with no disrespect to the umpires, you know that. they get a fairly high percentage right. But if there is technology and that's not available for women's cricket, it is a slight. It's like saying we don't have the budget for this and we don't quite want to give you the same privilege, because the women too need to question decisions once in a while. And of course, the responsibility of it all, they'll learn. Like I remember the first time DRS was instituted, I think the Indians were in Sri Lanka, and the Indians got it hopelessly wrong, because every time the spinner, Kumble said, well, everything is out all the time. But I think they've also matured and learned in the men's game, and I'm sure the women would relish it, would love the fact that there's now this recourse, and it adds to the drama of it all as well and just gets more things right.
Yeah, I think it's important to have the technology at its best. There still needs to be some refinement on umpire's call in the game.
True.
I mean, it's absurd to think that someone is not out because the umpire says it's not out, and the replay shows almost half the ball hitting the stumps, for goodness sake. So they still have to play around with that part of it, I think, but we're getting there. And I don't think there's any doubt that we're getting more credible decisions out of the process than we were before.
Well, some of the players featuring in this Ashes series have featured in the ICC's annual awards, which came out this week. Top performers across the men's and women's international game have all been celebrated. Significantly, Pakistan picked up 4 awards, including the Men's Cricketer of the Year, which was won by Shaheen Shah Afridi, and the Emerging Women's Cricketer of the Year in Fatima Sana. Now, Women's Cricketer of the Year was India's Smriti Mandhana. Charu, you'll be pleased about that. Jim, no Aussies on the list, though. I mean, did they just not play enough during the pandemic?
I can't see New Zealanders there either. So, yeah,
that's true.
Australia doesn't play much cricket. They only play the T20 when they have to, and they won that. They played the Ashes at home, and they won that. They don't like playing Test cricket overseas anymore. You can come and play in Australia if you want to play. So, look, we
I knew
on
that, pressy
our
button.
terms. I mean, it's nice to hand some lollies out at school to all the kids who are playing, but, you know, you've got to win big trophies. And none of these countries are winning big trophies.
Well, Australia got one.
Ouch. Ouch. Yeah.
Let's celebrate the individual wins. And in particular, then, let's talk about Pakistan, because in their 17-year history, the ICC Awards 17-year history, that is, Pakistan had won 3 of the main honours. And now they've won 4 in just 1 year. So, Charu, how would you rate Pakistan over the last 12 months, especially the men's team?
Well, it's just that they're carrying a bad reputation. It's a bit like South Africa for many years carried this reputation of being chokers, whether right or wrong. You can argue with that. Pakistan too, I mean, every time we refer to the team, we say mercurial, undependable, so on and so forth. But individually, there's no doubt that there's some very bright, fabulous cricketers in the team. And I have no argument with all 3 that have been nominated or given the award. I mean, Shaheen Shah, very, very incisive, terrific fast bowler, big, tall, everything that you need in a fast bowler. Babar Azam, I'll always have very high regard for, because he's technically just so pleasing to watch. Perhaps there's a case to be talked about here, whether the sum of their parts may be not adding up, but they have some individually brilliant cricketers. And I'm glad for Pakistan cricket, which we all know has been suffering for many years now, particularly in an attempt to try and play cricket at home, that at least they have this to cling on to and realize that they are really very good internationally, just haven't had quite the result that Australia has had when it comes to big tournaments.
Jim, have you enjoyed watching Pakistan in the last 12 months? The men's team, I'm guessing you would have seen a lot more of.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to the series that Australia's going to play, particularly the test matches in Pakistan, assuming it all comes off. That's a very important thing to occur, and these awards are very encouraging, particularly when you go down to the associates. One winner from Oman and the women's associate cricketer from Austria. That's usually an American saying, where do you come from? Austria, did you see? No, I said Australia. Ah, right. Anyway, but it's interesting to look at the overall best bowler, best batsman in the game at the moment are 2 Australians, but they don't feature because, as you say, you don't play enough. But it's good to see the spread of these awards. What do they actually get? Do they get a badge or a trophy or a check? What's the award?
I think a nice memento, isn't it?
A trophy. Yes. Yeah, you remember the old
I don't know
ICC
whether there's
trophy with the
finance.
ball on top? Yeah.
A perpetual.
I don't know whether there's financial reward
crystals.
attached.
Well, look, I'm looking forward to Pakistan just playing Test cricket against Australia again, apart from all the other little things that are going around at the moment in terms of the scheduling of the game and matches that are attractive. And to be quite honest with you, emerging men's cricketer of the year, Janman Malan. I've never heard of him, but he must be good.
Well, he had a really good knock against the Indians in the final ODI. If you remember, he played really well. It was very difficult to out.
Charu wants to come to you on Smriti Mandhana because she was named the Women's Cricketer of the Year for the second time in her career. And her numbers, 855 runs in 22 internationals, an average of 38.86, 1 century and 5 half-centuries. She's excellent across all formats, isn't she?
Well, the numbers speak for themselves. Of course, she's fairly prolific, hasn't maybe got as many big runs as she might like, but it's more just the way she bats. So pleasing. I was talking about Babar Azam a short while ago, and you know how lefties are. I mean, they're twice as elegant for some strange reason anyway. And she has not only been in good form around the world, not just back at home, but also the way she collects her runs, so pleasing. On the offside, I used to talk about Saurav Ganguly in the past about, there's God and there's Saurav Ganguly. But Smriti is just so fluent and she can pull pretty well too. So I think the batsmen are busy trying to figure out what's her Achilles heel. She's just that competent, very pleasing to look at. And when it comes to an award, of course, I mean, she has got it twice. In the subcontinent, I will wager that these awards probably carry a little more significance because we in the past, haven't gotten enough of them. And she's properly pleased. I just hope that overall, though, apart from her getting the award, it does something more for women's cricket in India, where there's a little more attention, more competition, perhaps more reward, where Indians wake up to say, hey, one of our own is the best in the world. So maybe we should flock to the sport in bigger numbers to watch and certainly in bigger numbers to play.
Even bigger? Is that possible? Even bigger? Now, I mentioned that some of the players from the Ashes series feature. It is only one, in fact. It's Tammy Beaumont for England. She's the women's T20 cricketer of the year. Another England player in Joe Root is the men's test player, even though on the end of the drubbing for the Ashes, of course, but individually, he still had a phenomenal 2021 with the bat. Well, that's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped here on All India Radio. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter. We're at BBCWS Sport and use the hashtag BBC Stumped. And check us out on YouTube as well. Go to BBC World Service YouTube. My thanks to Charu Sharma, Jim Maxwell, and to all of you for listening. We'll speak to you next week. Bye-bye.
From the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.